The movie opens up to best friends, Zach and Cameron, on their way to join the biggest fraternity in their college, Sterling College. They punched themselves to make sure that they weren't dreaming because joining this fraternity had been their biggest dream since they got to Sterling College. Getting to the frat house, they met a lot of drunk students and half-naked girls. Now this was a dream come true for the guys. They meet with the frat president and he welcomes them to the frat house. The movie shifts to the next scene, where we meet the Delta Pi sorority. The sorority is just a direct economic opposite of the Alpha House. For one, they didn't have any sorority house, and as opposed to partying and having fun, which they would have loved to do, all they did was meet up in classrooms and complain about their injustices. The associate dean shows up during their meeting and he brings them a deal that would totally change everything. He takes them to the frat house while the frat boys were having their sacred induction ceremony, and there he tells the boys that he was officially making the frat house co-ed. So, in essence, he was gonna make the boys and the girls live in the same house. Now this, to the normal teenager, would sound like a dream come true, but he added that they would have to stop all partying and frolicking, and that they would be expelled if they so much as make the girls feel uncomfortable. The boys weren't having it, and after some futile arguments, most of them, including your president, stormed off and left the fraternity. The associate dean appoints Cameron as the acting president, and he asks him and Kelly Kramer, the sorority president, to divide the house equally between both factions. It was clear that Cameron was having a thing for Kelly, but she was adamant about it. Zach meets an old friend of his called Melanie, who had just been transferred to their college. It was obvious that they had some history. The girls go on to clean the house, which the boys were so not happy about. But in the midst of all the storm, some of the boys were starting to see that every cloud had a silver lining, and they were starting to look at the whole situation through a different lens. Kelly catches Cameron spying on her while she was naked, and she threatened to report him to the associate dean. They later came to a compromise when Zach proposed that the dudes would stay away from the first floor, which would be the ladies' quarters, and the ladies would stay away from the basement, which would be their boys' only zone, and they could all share the ground floor. At this point, some of the boys were getting frustrated, and so they devised a plan to make the girls' life miserable while in the house, till they left on their own. They put this plan in motion. The first day, they waked the girls up for a pep talk, which felt more like a talk to intimidate them. That didn't work. So they brought TVs to the house and made the girls watch porn out of their will. That also didn't work. Now they also handed them free shirts. Now, to be honest, it was hard to tell if they were actually trying to make the girls leave the house or if they were trying to make them feel more comfortable. But after handing the girls free shirts, there was a caveat to it. They asked the girls to write the naughtiest things that they had ever done on a first date on the shirts and wear it to dinner that evening, which the girls did after a bit of hesitation and cajoling from their sorority leader. It was a hell of a sight to the dinner table that evening. The next day, two of the guys strap a video camera to a pole and spy on the girls while they were naked. They run off to show the video to Zach, but he was in the room reading and in sort of a pensive mood that day, so he declines to watch. He had been getting close to Melanie and it seemed like there was a spark of old flame kindling between them. She comes into the room and reminds him that what she had written on her shirt during dinner that night was actually from their first date in 7th grade. She then leaves him to continue his studying and to ponder on what she had just told him. The boys steal the girls' towels while they were bathing and made them run out of the bathroom naked. At this point, Kelly Kramer had had enough and she goes to the associate dean's office to report them. But over there, she overhears the dean talking to someone on the phone about Provision 13. Now, Provision 13 is a law in the school that states that whenever a frat house was in co-ed, whichever part was below 40% could get kicked out by the part that was over 60%. Now, this was great news to Kelly. She goes back to the dorm and she and the girls devise a plan to get the guys kicked out and become the majority. At school, she seemingly apologizes to Cameron and tells him that they, the girls, had a surprise for the boys at dinner as a peace offering for all their troubles. Now Cameron was a bit surprised and suspicious, but he agrees to take them up on the offer. That evening, the boys wore their best clothes and the girls welcomed them to a new Taimori. To say the boys were excited would be an understatement. Unknown to them though, that this was all a scheme by Kelly to get the associate dean to catch them in the act of indecency and expel them. And so she calls the dean, but her plan went sour because what she hadn't realized was that her girls were the ones who were indecent, and judging from everything, they were indecent by choice. And so the dean arrives and expels the two girls and only one guy. The girls were disappointed because things hadn't gone in their favor, but they decided to up their game and be more smart about their executions. In the next scene, the guys switch one of the girls' video presentation about the fall of the city of Pompeii with an indecent video of her which they had recorded while she was working out, and they totally embarrassed her during her presentation. She wasn't pleased. At the frat house that night, they all bond over a game of sip and strip, and later that night, Zach and Melanie staggers into a room, both drunk out of their minds, and they were gonna have sex, but Zach passes out cold. The next morning, the associate dean shows up to find two girls in the guys' room. The girls pretended they had been taken advantage of, and the dean expels the two boys he had found with them. The girls' plan was working, so the boys employed the help of Cameron's cousin, Natalie, and made her join the sorority as their mole. The dean returns back to the college from his vacation and learns about all that had been happening with the fraternity. Being a former member of the fraternity himself, he wasn't very happy, and he scolds the associate dean for making the Alpha House co-ed. But since the operation of the fraternities fell within the associate dean's jurisdiction, there wasn't really much he could do about it. In the next scene, two more boys were expelled for spraying water on the girls while they were outside sunbathing. After that, another guy was expelled for joining the girls while they were pillow fighting. This time, one of the girls was expelled too. With the help of Natalie, the boys plant a vibrator in one of the girls' school bag, and at class, she carelessly loses it and she gets expelled for that. Kelly soon gets a whiff that Natalie was working for the boys, and she asks one of the girls to do some investigation on her, and she proceeds to expedite the process of kicking the guys out. Another of the guys gets expelled when two of the girls infiltrate the basement, which was supposed to be a boys-only zone. I mean, everyone was getting expelled for the dumbest reasons. But be that as it may, Zach has sex with Melanie in the next scene, and after sex, she reveals to him the girls' plan to use Provision 13 against the boys and take over the frat house. He wasn't very pleased about this, and so he goes back to Cameron and tells him about this. That night, they both ninja their way up to the associate dean's office in a bid to steal and destroy the Provision 13 papers. They quickly hide under the table when the dean's secretary comes in with a guy and has sex with him on the associate dean's table. The boys eavesdrop as she moans about her hatred for the associate dean and his bid to apply for the job of a dean in an all-girls college just so he could flirt with as many girls as possible, and that was the main reason why he was being so nice to the ladies. That night, the boys hold a meeting to discuss ways to throw the girls out. They set up some cameras in the girls' room and charge $10 per day for internet users to stream the girls doing their things. And the girls in turn make a magazine of the guys photoshopped with the worst body parts, and they sell them on campus. The boys weren't too happy about this, and they throw a tantrum about it, but the girls don't care. Kelly soon learns that Natalie and Cameron were cousins, and so she makes a plan to get Natalie kicked out. She sends her a kinky letter telling her to meet her in her room later that night. Being gay, Natalie gleefully accepts and gets into the room. She finds two of the frat boys already there, half naked, waiting under the sheets. Unknown to her, that Kelly had actually sent the same letter to the two frat boys, and they were all being set up. And just at that moment, the dean and the associate dean shows up, and they expelled Natalie and the two boys. Now that the sorority had over 60% of the house, they swiftly proceeded to kick the boys out. The dean wasn't happy about it, as he had been a member of the fraternity during his time, but there wasn't anything he could do. The rules were the rules. Later that day, Kelly goes to the associate dean and gives him the paperwork to officially turn the Alpha House into a sorority, the Delta House. But then he shuts her down and makes it clear to her that he wanted to get rid of fraternities and sororities altogether, both the Alpha House and the Delta House. And he asks the girls to vacate the house within 24 hours. This was very distressing news for the girls, and they felt played and used. And so they go to the boys, and this time they sincerely apologize for everything and ask the boys to help them get the fraternity back. Before agreeing to help them, the boys make them strip and hold up a sign on campus, basically telling everyone on the campus that had seen the magazines about the boys with the mingly body parts that the boys were actually pretty hung. They just had to set the record straight after the little shenanigan with their pictures on their magazine. After doing that, they all go to the dean to ask for his help, and he tells them that there was nothing he could do, and that the only way that they could get their fraternity back was if the associate dean gets fired from the college. And the only way he could get fired was if he did something very repulsive that the college would have no other option than to cut all ties with him. So they get to work, and they infiltrate the associate dean's office and plant cameras everywhere. They also install a bug in his computer which helped them get live feeds of his kinky conversations, which takes up most of his working hours. They create a fake profile and send him some kinky messages. They set up a date with him, and he shows up at the building to carry out the sexual act, unknown to him that he was being recorded in the act. In the next scene, the associate dean gives a speech on his resignation as associate dean of Sterling College and his acceptance as the new dean of Virgin Mary University in front of the administrators and board of directors of the Virgin Mary University. As he was giving his speech, the guys and girls of the Alpha House switched the presentation slide to the kinky video of him. Everyone present saw the video and they were totally disgusted and quickly left. In the next scene, the Alpha House is back in business, hotter than ever, and the boys and the girls agreed to live together happily. Even the old president of the house and his friends come back to be inducted into the house again. Zach and Melanie become a thing, and Cameron goes to Kelly's room, and you know what's next. In the final scene, we see the now disgraced associate dean walking away from the college dejectedly, before proceeding to rage and throw a tantrum at the students around. And that's it for now, guys. Don't forget, the only induction you're gonna need into this party is a simple tap on the subscribe button. And please keep the party alive by tapping the like button and leaving a comment. So that'll do it for now. Till next week, have fun and stay safe.